DonInLondon, hello. Readings from the Big Book of AA. This, and today, Chapter 9, The Family Afterward. But first, the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So, the chapter 9, The Family Afterward. Our women folk have suggested certain attitudes a wife may take with a husband who is recovering. Perhaps they created the impression that he is to be wrapped up in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means the opposite. All members of the family should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding and love. This involves a process of deflation. The alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitudes towards himself or herself. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. We find the more one member of the family demands that the others concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness. And one of the things I know from my own experience is there was guilt from parts of my family for cutting me off. And the answer was it was the best thing they could do, because I was hurting myself, and in the process of hurting myself I was hurting them too. So it's not about cotton wool, and it's not about putting anybody on a pedestal. There are special circumstances, but that doesn't give anybody who is in recovery the right to have special treatment other than to try and be human again. So it is a difficult call, and of course there is prejudice against somebody who has fallen into the malady of alcoholism, because it's very, very inconvenient. It means the person has had to change, and maybe relationships need to heal in a new way. Anyway, continuing. And why? It is not because each wants to play the lead. It's not each trying to arrange the family show to his liking. Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family rather than give? Cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. A doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. And it's fear of the behaviour of the alcoholic, what's coming next, and never knowing. The entire family is, to some extent, ill. Traumatised, actually. Let families realise, as they start their journey, that it will not all be fair weather. Each in his turn may be footsore and may struggle. There will be alluring shortcuts and bypaths down which they may wander to lose their way. Suppose we tell you some of the obstacles a family will meet. Suppose we suggest how they may be avoided, even converted to good use for others. The family of an alcoholic longs for the return of happiness and security. They remember when father was romantic, thoughtful and successful. Today's life is measured against that of other years, and when it falls short, the family may be unhappy. Family confidence in dad is rising high. The good old days will soon be back, they think. Sometimes they demand that dad bring them back instantly. God, they believe, almost owes this recompense on a long overdue account. But the head of the house has spent years in pulling down the structures of business, romance, friendships, health. These things are now ruined or damaged. It will take time to clear away the wreck. Though old buildings will eventually be replaced by finer ones, the new structures will take years to complete. Indeed, it's just one day at a time. And if it took years to wreck a life, salvage is quite difficult. Continuing, Father knows he is to blame. It may take him many seasons of hard work to be restored financially, but he shouldn't be reproached. Perhaps he will never have so much money again, but the wise family will admire him for what he is trying to do, or trying to be, rather than what he was trying to get. Now and then, the family will be plagued by spectres from the past, for the drinking career of almost every alcoholic has been marked by escapades, funny, humiliating, shameful, or tragic. The first impulse will be to bury these skeletons in a dark closet and padlock the door. The family may be possessed by the idea that future happiness can be based only upon forgetfulness of the past. We think that such a view is self-centered and in direct conflict with the new way of living. Henry Ford once said, or made a wise remark to the effect that experience is the thing of supreme value in life. That is only true if one is willing to turn the past to good account. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. The alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset of the family, and frequently it is almost the only one. The painful past may be of infinite value to other families still struggling with their problem. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not, and when the occasion requires, each member of it should only be too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. Cling to the thought that, in God's hands, or in good conscience, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it you can avert death and misery for them. So, although we don't look back and stare, we need to actually revisit some of the past some of the time, so we may share our experience, strength and hope. And it is a great asset, because if other people understand what they are going through is not uncommon, then there is identification, and with identification comes a new way of looking at the old ways of living. Continuing, it is possible to dig up past misdeeds so they become a blight, a veritable plague. For example, we know of situations in which the alcoholic or his wife had love affairs. In the first flush of spiritual experience they forgave each other and drew closer together. The miracle of reconciliation was at hand. Then, under one provocation or another, the aggrieved one would unearth the old affair and angrily cast its ashes about. A few of us have had these growing pains, and they have hurt a great deal. Husbands and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until new perspective, new victory over hurt pride could be won. In most cases, the alcoholic survived this ordeal without relapse, but not always. So we think that unless some good and useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be disclosed. We families of Alcoholics Anonymous keep few skeletons in the closet. Everyone knows about the other's alcoholic troubles. This is a condition which, in ordinary life, would produce untold grief. There might be scandalous gossip, laughter at the expense of other people, and a tendency to take advantage of intimate information. Among us, these are rare occurrences. We do talk about each other a great deal, but we almost invariably temper such talk by a spirit of love and tolerance. Another principle we observe carefully is that we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. We find it better, when possible, to stick to our own stories. A man may criticize or laugh at himself, and it will affect others favourably. But criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. Members of the family should watch such matters carefully. For one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. We alcoholics are sensitive people. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. Many alcoholics are enthusiasts. They run to extremes. At the beginning of recovery, a man will take, as a rule, one or two directions. He may either plunge into a frantic attempt to get on his feet in business, or he may be so enthralled by his new life that he talks or thinks of little else. In either case, certain family problems will arise. With these we have experience galore. We think it dangerous if he rushes headlong at his economic problem. The family will be affected also, pleasantly at first, as they feel their money troubles are about to be solved, then not so pleasantly as they find themselves neglected. Dad may be tired at night and preoccupied by the day. He may take small interest in the children and may show irritation when reproved for his delinquencies. If not irritable, he may seem dull and boring, not gay and affectionate as the family would like him to be. Mother may complain of inattention. They are all disappointed, and often let him feel it. Beginning with such complaints, a barrier arises. He is straining every nerve to make up for lost time. He is striving to recover fortune and reputation, and feels he is doing very well. And in some instances in my life, when I was trying to make restitution and try and get back on my feet, I found I became one-dimensional again. I tried to get work right, get the economy running on a personal level, and forgot that I was still quite ill, and emotionally ill, mentally ill. I didn't realise it could happen to me, and I didn't realise just how damaged I'd got, and I also never realised how damaged I was by my father's drinking. But I don't blame him anymore, because that was what he did to survive. That's all he knew, and that's all that people did back then, when things were tough. So we carry the experiences of life, and it's really important to understand that forgiving, tolerance and love do help, but it won't be an overnight success. It's the rest of our lives staying sober one day at a time. Anyway, continuing. Sometimes mother and the children don't think so. Having been neglected and misused in the past, they think father owes them more than they are getting. They want him to make a fuss over them. They expect him to give them the nice times they used to have before he drank so much, and to show his contrition for what they suffered. But Dad doesn't give freely of himself. Resentment grows. He becomes still less communicative. Sometimes he explodes over a trifle. The family is mystified. They criticise, pointing out how he is falling down on his spiritual program. And it's enormous pressure in the early days of recovery, a desire to be okay, a desire to be back on track. And it can become fanatical unless we actually keep ourselves slow and in the moment of what's really possible. This sort of thing can be avoided. Both father and the family are mistaken. Though each side may have some justification, it is of little use to argue and only makes the impasse worse. The family must realise that Dad, though marvellously improved, is still convalescing. And that word convalescing for me, I didn't realise it was okay to convalesce. I just thought I had to come out fighting from my corner and be alright. And every time I did that, I fell flat on my face. They should be thankful he is sober and able to be of this world once more, living in the world of now. Let them praise his progress. Let them remember that his drinking wrought all kinds of damage that may take long to repair. If they sense these things, they will not take so seriously his periods of crankiness, depression or apathy, which will disappear when there is tolerance, love and spiritual understanding. But the alcoholic needs to practice that on themselves as well, or however can they be able to do the same to other people? And this is part of the learning. We can't just be okay. We have to live and learn a whole new set of ways of living, new attitudes, new behaviour. Anyway, continuing. The head of the house ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. Absolutely true. He can scarcely square the account in his lifetime, but he must see the danger of over-concentration on financial success. Although financial recovery is on the way, for many of us, we found we could not place money first. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never came before it. It never preceded. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. He is not likely to get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. We know there are difficult wives and families, and too right they've become difficult and distraught. But the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. As each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to others, he lays a basis for helpful discussion. These family talks will be constructive if they are carried on without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. Little by little, mother and the children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. Giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle, and I guess that's what it is in life. Giving rather than getting, our needs met, our wants forgotten. But to get there in a society like ours is quite difficult, which says you should be right now. So, continuing. Assume on the other hand that father has, at the outset, a stirring spiritual experience. Overnight, as it were, he is a different man. He becomes a religious enthusiast. He is unable to focus on anything else. As soon as his sobriety begins to be taken as a matter of course, the family may look at their strange new dad with apprehension, then with irritation. There is talk about spiritual matters morning, noon and night. He may demand that the family find God in a hurry, or exhibit amazing indifference to them and say he is above worldly considerations. In other words, egos coming out again in great big gobs, which destroy our humility and self-esteem. Because there is nothing worse, in my own personal experience, of the zealot who feels that they have now got a handle on the spiritual angle, rather than really realizing that the spiritual angle to living is coping with reality. He may tell mother, who has been religious all her life, that she doesn't know what it's all about, and that she had better get his brand of spirituality while there is yet time. Yes, firebrands in the household don't help. When father takes this track, the family may react unfavourably. I think they'd be bloody pissed off, actually. They may be jealous of a God who has stolen dad's affections. While grateful that he drinks no more, they may not like the idea that God has accomplished the miracle where they failed. And in actuality, the miracle has been achieved not by the individual, but by leaning on fellowship and learning the wisdom from others, which is God working through people. They often forget father was beyond human aid. They may not see that why their love and devotion did not straighten him out. Dad is not so spiritual after all, they say. If he means to right his wrongs, why all this concern for everyone in the world but his family? What about his talk that God will take care of them? They suspect father is a bit balmy. Well, we're only just coming out of the insanity, so you can actually say father is balmy, and or your uncle is a nutter, which I'm sure my nephews probably felt at some times, although they never saw the true extent of how it really impacted on me, except when I was in my last throes, and photographs from that time, there are one or two about. I don't know where they are, but I wouldn't like to share them with anybody now. I did look like I was about to die, and that's no understatement, I'm sorry to say. Anyway, a bit balmy. He is not so unbalanced as they may think. Many of us have experienced dad's elation. We have indulged in a spiritual intoxication. Like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn in over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. Joy at our release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels he has struck something better than gold. For a time he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. He may not see at once that he has barely scratched a limitless load, which will pay dividends only if he mines it for the rest of his life, and insists on giving away the entire product. and especially making sure that some of the entire product comes the family's way. If the family cooperates, Dad will soon see that he is suffering from a distortion of values. He will perceive that his spiritual growth is lopsided, that for an average man like himself, a spiritual life which does not include his family obligations may not be so perfect after all. If the family will appreciate that Dad's current behaviour is but a phase of his development, all will be well. In the midst of an understanding and sympathetic family, these vagaries of Dad's spiritual infancy will quickly disappear. I sincerely hope so. The opposite may happen. Should the family condemn and criticise, Dad may feel that for years his drinking had placed him on the wrong side of every argument, but that now he has become a superior person with God on his side. If the family persists in criticism, this fallacy may take still greater hold on Father. Instead of treating the family as he should, he may retreat further into himself and feel that he has spiritual justification for so doing. Though the family does not fully agree with Dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility towards the family, it is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics, because we all learn that we can only go so far, and then we become exhausted and endangered again. During those first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else, to realise that we are human and not God. Though some of his manifestations are alarming and disagreeable, we think Dad will be on a firmer foundation than the man who is placing business or professional success ahead of spiritual development, and not forgetting that spiritual development is learning. It's having humility to keep on learning each and every day all the elements of life. He will be less likely to drink again, and anything is preferable to that. Those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. And I'll repeat that. Those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. For example, God providing a car parking space, or God making sure that that's as far as it need go on that. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. In other words, we keep on growing up to understand that spiritual is always in the now. It's about coping with what is and learning how to live day by day. This dream would have been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. We have come to believe He would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with Him, but our feet ought to be placed firmly planted on the earth. That is where our fellow travellers are, on the earth, and that is where our work must be done. These are the realities for us. We have found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness, because they're the same thing. One more suggestion. Whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. They can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them. In other words, we're learning, and forgetfulness and a return back to old ways is so easy because it's a known pattern of living. Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts a sane spiritual program, making a better practical use of it, or a partner who does this. There will be other profound changes in the household. Liquor incapacitated father for so many years that mother became head of the house. She met these responsibilities gallantly. By force of circumstances, she was often obliged to treat father as a sick or wayward child. Even when he wanted to assert himself, he could not, for his drinking placed him constantly in the wrong. Mother made all the plans and gave the directions. When sober, father usually obeyed. Thus mother, through no fault of her own, became accustomed to wearing the family trousers. Father, coming suddenly to life again, often begins to assert himself. This means trouble, unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. And of course, in our current way of life, in our societies or communities, there is a greater understanding of equality in the roles of mother and father, and there is a greater understanding of the roles of children, and understanding how a family unit can be very cohesive and quite democratic, because in essence that is what the fellowship program offers: democratic anarchy, which means that there has to be agreement of everyone as things move forward, or there is no moving forward at all, except for resentments being problems, or rather expectations becoming resentments under construction. So it's a recalibration or a rebalancing of all the roles. Drinking isolates most homes from the outside world. Father may have laid aside for years all normal activities, clubs, civic duties and sports. When he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. The family may feel they hold a mortgage on Dad, so big that no equity should be left out for outsiders. Instead of developing new channels of activity for themselves, mother and children demand that he stay home and make up the deficiency. It never happened in the old days, when I was a kid. It was always, we were isolated and away from. And I'm very sad about that, but it's just the way it was. At the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there if the family is going to play an effective part in the new life. Father will necessarily spend much time with other alcoholics, but this activity should be balanced. New acquaintances who know nothing of alcoholism might be made and thoughtful consideration given their needs. The problems of the community might engage attention. Though the family has no religious connections, they may wish to make contact with or take membership in a religious body. Alcoholics who have derided religious people will be helped by such contacts. Being possessed of a spiritual experience, the alcoholic will find he has much in common with these people, though he may differ with them on many matters. If he does not argue about religion, he will make new friends and is sure to find new avenues of usefulness and pleasure. He and his family can be a bright spot in such congregations. He may bring new hope and new courage to many a priest, minister or rabbi who gives his all to minister to our troubled world. We intend the foregoing as a helpful suggestion only. So far as we are concerned, there is nothing obligatory about it. As non-denominational people, we cannot make up others' minds for them. Each individual should consult his own conscience. And this comes back to the AA preamble for me, where there is no alliance with anything. It's there. The fellowship is there with a desire to stop drinking. That's how we get in, and then share experience, strength, and hope of how we did it. I hear noises in the background. That's a little bit better. Sorry about that. So it is a matter of conscience in the end, and whatever our religious beliefs are, they are ours. Whatever sect or denomination we may belong to is perfectly fine. But within AA, although we have all those connections and affiliations, we stick with what works, which is, it's none of our business what anybody else may have in terms of their faith or belief. We're there for a desire to keep sober and share the message. We have been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. We have been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspect, but we aren't a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our experience, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. When we see a man sinking into the mire, that is alcoholism, we give him first aid and place what we have at his disposal. For his sake, we do not recount and almost relive the horrors of our past. But those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. Yes, so we lean on fellowship. We're not, what's the word? We're not evangelists. What we are is sharing experience, strength and hope which is relevant to help another person find sobriety. And we can't do it on our own. That is the whole reason why there is a fellowship in the first place. So we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over seemingly tragic experience out of the past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and have been given the power to help others. Always good to get a call from your mother, and she's in good nick. Anyway, continuing from where I was before, I'll just read the last paragraph so I can get back into the rhythm of it. So we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and have been given the power to help others. Everybody knows that those in bad health and those who seldom play do not laugh so much. So let each family play together or separately as much as their circumstances warrant. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous and free, and in good conscience, tolerance, love and forgiveness always round. The alcoholic cannot actually put resentments there in his head. If he does, resentments lead back to relapse in terms of our attitudes, behaviour, and worse, a relapse possibly into drink. We cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears, though it once was just for many of us. But it is clear that we made our own misery. God didn't do it. Avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, but if trouble comes, cheerfully capitalise it as an opportunity to demonstrate His omnipotence. In other words, for me, that means get in touch with other people, the wisdom of others. God works through people for me. And mine's a very simple understanding: truth, love and wisdom. Not my opinion. So if you hear opinion in my voice about anything, it's your opinion which counts most. Now about health. A body badly burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living is a most powerful health restorative. We who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health, but we have seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. Hardly one of our crowd now shows any mark of dissipation. But this does not mean that we disregard human health measures. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves, that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that God has wrought miracles among us. We should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their lives are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward. And as an aside, many people I hear often criticise doctors and psychiatrists, but the problem was we went to doctors and psychiatrists when we were fully in the throes of the malady of alcoholism. So whatever a doctor or psychiatrist might have suggested or may have prescribed for us would not work, because alcohol just was a wash, and no amount of medication will actually help an alcoholic if he's still drinking large volumes, because after all we're changing the way the chemistry set works. So why is it that we belittle doctors and psychiatrists? Often because when we went there we despised ourselves as much and could not take the advice, stop drinking, so maybe some sort of medical help might work. One of many doctors who had the opportunity of reading this book in manuscript form told us that the use of sweets was often helpful, of course depending upon a doctor's advice. He thought all alcoholics should constantly have chocolate available for its quick energy value at times of fatigue. He added that occasionally in the night a vague craving arose which would be satisfied by candy. Many of us have noticed a tendency to eat sweets and have found this practice beneficial. Yeah, well, as long as you don't go at it like we did with alcohol. Who amongst us has not picked up a pack of sweets and ate the whole thing and then wanted more? A word about sex relations. Alcohol is so sexually stimulating to some men that they have overindulged. Couples are occasionally dismayed to find that when drinking is stopped, the man tends to be impotent. Unless the reason is understood, there may be an emotional upset. Some of us have had this experience, only to enjoy in a few months a finer intimacy than ever. Yes, I can wholeheartedly agree with that. There should be no hesitancy in consulting a doctor or psychologist if the condition persists, especially if you've got type 1 diabetes, like me. We do not know of many cases where this difficulty lasted long. The alcoholic may find it, don't forget this was written in the 1930s and 40s, so there weren't little blue pills available, and I have to say thank God there are. And once you get back in, well I was going to say in the rhythm of things, well that's true. Actually the little blue pill becomes less of the need than it just becomes less of a need. The alcoholic may find it hard to re-establish friendly relations with his children. Their young minds were impressionable while he was drinking. Without saying so, they may cordially hate him for what he has done to them and to their mother. And quite rightly too. Don't forget, all emotions are valid and there for a reason. The children are sometimes dominated by a pathetic hardness and cynicism. They cannot seem to forgive and forget. This may hang on for months, long after their mother has accepted Dad's new way of living and thinking. In time, they will see that he's a new man, and in their own way, they will let him know it. When this happens, they can be invited to join in morning meditation, and they can take part in the daily discussion without rancour or bias. From that point on, progress will be rapid. Marvellous results often follow such a reunion. But in the modern world, life is tough, and attitudes and peer groups and how it all works. It's very difficult, so time is of the essence. Letting time work. Whether the family goes on a spiritual basis or not, the alcoholic member has to, if he would recover. The others must be convinced of this new status beyond the shadow of a doubt. Seeing is believing to most families who have lived with a drinker. Here is a case in point. One of our friends is a heavy smoker and coffee drinker. There was no doubt he overindulged. Seeing this and meaning to be helpful, his wife commenced to admonish him about it. He admitted he was overdoing these things, but frankly said that he was not ready to stop. His wife is one of those persons who really feels there is something rather sinful about these commodities, so she nagged, and her intolerance finally threw him into a fit of anger. He got drunk. Of course our friend was wrong, dead wrong. He had to painfully admit that and mend his spiritual fences. Though he is now a most effective member of AA, or Alcoholics Anonymous, he still smokes and drinks coffee, but neither his wife nor anyone else stands in judgment. She sees she was wrong to make a burning issue out of such a matter when his more serious ailments were being rapidly cured. And of course we know more now, medically, about the dangers of smoking or any addiction. So we have to temper this and what it says with what is real today. We have three little mottos which are appropriate. Here they are. First things first, sober. Live and let live. Try not to judge. And easy does it. Let time work. So that's the family afterward. And as I emphasise, it was written quite a while ago with the attitude of mostly it was men who were alcoholics. Well, I think that's probably true. That with the way the modern world is, anyone can be an alcoholic. And if we have the malady or the allergy, or we are susceptible to trying to find oblivion from a reality we just can't live with, drink is always an option because it's still legal. And I don't want it to be illegal, but how do we actually temper our drinking when we're an alcoholic? There is only one answer, and that's sobriety, and to learn how to live life on life's terms. It's not easy, this way forward, and it's certainly not easy for families, and sometimes because of the way we behaved, either we don't have families because we never got married, that would be me. We had girlfriends who we would have dearly loved to have married, but they were wise enough to walk away. Or we ran away from those who would have us because we just didn't know how to cope. So these days we can be there in life with or without family, but the impact also is on the extended family, brothers, sisters, parents, and how we live. And of course the sins of the father do come down the generation. They weren't really sins. My dad had an awful life. It wasn't his fault. And if we'd understood and known what was going on, I don't know if we could have helped him, because we were all so frightened by our experiences over the decades. Life is tough, and life is difficult. As I said before, like M. Scott Peck said in The Road Less Travelled, the first sentence is, life is difficult. And it goes on to explain that if we understand it is difficult, that if we understand that each moment we can make choices to good, not always easy choices. Sometimes we have to give up careers, besides drinking. Sometimes we have to change everything, except one thing, which is learning to love, be loved back, and useful again. And that comes in many ways. So at the end of my videos I always share the serenity prayer to God or to good conscience, depending on your belief system, how a higher power works in your life. Simply, I'm not the higher power, as if ever I thought I was. Maybe I did somehow think that. But it works. It really does. That serenity prayer. Can do, can't do, and wisdom to know the difference. So to God or good conscience, as you come to understand for yourself, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference for me is just for today.